Well, I'll give you my personal welcome to Las Vegas. Yay! It's one of my homes away from home, as you'll find out tonight. And I come tonight to talk mainly about paradise. Okay? Using PK on the dice. And give you a little bit of background, and I'm going to leave plenty of room for questions at the end. Probably 25 years or so ago at Monroe Institute, where I am a trainer of their programs, I was working with Bob Monroe, and there was a program where he was getting the energy very high, and we were practicing with that energy, and one of the things we used was a dice game. And I found I could go into this wide open heart space, feel grounded to the earth, connected with spirit, and roll what I want on the dice, 7, 7, 7, 7, like that. And as I did that, other people could do it. So it intrigued me because I'm a clinical psychologist by background, and it seemed to be the same energy as healing energy healing, and the same energy you use if you really want to manifest powerfully. But both those two are harder to study, and with PK on the dice, that's pretty easy because we know exactly statistically 36 possible rolls. This will come up X amount of times, those kind of things. So that intrigued me as a way maybe to begin to study PK. I first went down to the Princeton Anomalous Engineering Research Lab and worked with the folks there a little bit. And I left there after a few days knowing PK was real. This is, again, 25 years ago. Now we know PK, RV, telepathy are all Six Sigma events, right? More than one by a billion to one by chance in meta-analysis of the data. At that time, we weren't quite as confident, but the beautiful people at Princeton put me through some paces, and I got some individual results that were highly statistically significant, and I loved the way it made me feel. Excited, wide open heart seemed to be working. So one of them you might be familiar with, there was an experiment called ArtReg. A picture of a pyramid, a picture of a kitty cat goes on there by random number generator, picking pixels from either picture, and you see mush until you think or feel or something, kitty, kitty, kitty. So I'm glad they didn't have Facebook and YouTube at that time, because I really got down there and went, here, kitty, 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 and because I love cats. And dang, the cat got clearer and clearer and clearer. And I think that was at 30,000 to 1 by chance. So I thought, this is really intriguing. So I left there knowing it was real and knowing that I could do it. And I really, really wanted a black belt in PK. And I looked around, where could you learn about PK easily without being in a scientific lab all the time? And it wouldn't hurt if in all those weeks of practicing that I could continue paying my office staff at home. So Vegas came up because we know all the rules about the dice in terms of statistics, and we know that the games in Vegas are fair, meaning it should just be random chance, because if it wasn't, they'd be out of business, right? So I came out here by myself, and I'd spend a few days preparing, and found myself going into a very strong altered state of consciousness, and I want you to note that, because I think that's an essential for really powerful PK. And in that altered state, began to have interesting, anomalous experiences, much like I did at Monroe in their meditation booths, such as being able to see through physical matter, hear angelic choirs, feeling that time stopped. So the dice would be in the middle of the table just rotating like this. I felt I could go to the bathroom and come back and they'd still be there. And then finally when that would get boring, I'd say, okay, land 3-3, and boom, they'd land 3-3. That time thing is another element that I've found seems important. There's some weird thing that goes on in energy healing, in manifesting, and in PK where you leap out of linear time. So I practiced that a while, and at the beginning it was pretty uncontrolled. I would be in an ecstasy state out here, go into depression back home. Light bulbs would all break in my house. So the day I got home, It was pretty uncontrolled, but after a while I learned how to integrate the type of high energies I was using with being more grounded and going through normal daily life. And so after I felt like it was a positive experience, I decided, let's see if I could teach this. I taught 1 or 2 people individually, and then started the Inner Vegas Adventure workshops. And tomorrow we will be starting the first day of our 91st one of those. So we've done 91 of those over the last 20 years. And that's quite a database. And within that, we've seen very strong evidence of PK, in my opinion, outside of a laboratory 4-way double-blinded type of control situation. So what would I mean? Well, we'd have somebody on roulette get 6 numbers in a row, which I think is 1.6 billion to 1 by chance. It's 36 times 36 times 36. 200 to million to 1 by chance on slot machines. Typically, this is very intentional. I'll go down and say, I want to get a royal flush in hearts on this machine, this particular machine at this particular moment, and go down and hit it in the first or second pull. That'd be about 160,000 to 1 by chance. And the fact that it pays $4,000 for a $5 bet, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt in many ways, because working at Princeton with those beautiful engineer folks, as a psychologist, as I looked at what they were doing massive trials, 12.5 million trials in one experiment, but usually unmotivated undergraduate kids who are drunk the night before and were there for extra credit. They didn't tell them whether it was possible or not. We've now learned if the person thinks it's possible, it's more likely they will be able to do PK. And their feedback usually was visual, and a lot of people just naturally close their eyes when they're doing healing work, when they're imagining or visualizing, manifesting, those type of things. And they had very long experimental periods. One of the tests I first did there was called height of a fountain experiment. Water bubbles by random hydrodynamic law, and a column height keeps changing, right? And so they said, keep it high for 15, keep it low for 15, in between do 15 minutes of control, don't mess with it. So on the high, I used that idea of aura, right? My own aura, but I put it around the column of the water to support the water. On the low, I imagined my energy like the sword in Star Wars, cutting the water. Of course, this is all behind glass, you can't get near it. And we got a real strong Z-score on that. But it was exhausting, 15 full minutes. So what the casino offers uniquely is a highly motivating environment where the reward is not only instant, but very juicy to the person and kind of never gets old. You know, if you say, oh, you do well on PK and a red light will go on. That's exciting maybe 3 times, okay? The latest experiments I've been doing has been with the University of Virginia Department of Perceptual Studies. And they do 48 seconds on PK of trying to affect the material in this gray box, no feedback, 45-second rest, 45-second on, 45-second rest for 100 trials in sequence while you're hooked up to 128 lead EEG, which took them over a half hour to put all those pins in your head. Or not in your head, but very tightly into the skin. And so if you contrast that type of experiment, which in fact came out positive for PK with me, and the brainwave patterns were real interesting, we can talk about that later if you want, but it's boring. And the casino, for the people that come to the workshop, for myself individually, we don't seem to have a boredom problem. What we do have is everything surfacing that can get in the way that you could put under the large term ego. In the casino, it could be, I walk in and they go, oh, here comes Mr. Lucky again. And I go into childhood memories. I'm not lucky, because I was youngest boy, and the older kids in the family had less financial resources. My parents were stricter on them, so they always said I was the lucky one. And so here I have this program, I'm not lucky, and I didn't even know I had. Then people, when they come to the workshop, performance anxiety is whatever I try to do my PK, these people betting with me may win or lose. PK is results driven. So if you can take that energy and change it from ego anxiety to this is important, I'm going to do well, it actually increases the chances you'll do PK, but you have to be out of ego. So for the first couple of years I came out, getting rid of ego was like putting out brush fires everywhere. Fear of money and loss. I have to wear the blue shirt with my hands like this for it to work on a Tuesday only. All kinds of things that you see also in remote viewing. You can get all this overlay of what's necessary. Trying to quiet that down was a challenge, trying to meet fear with courage, if you will. But I changed to melting fear with love. And if I could go into a state of lovingness, that transpersonal agape kind of love, the ego would quiet. And we found one really good way to do that was to use the Monroe Institute's Hemi-Sync, which is a binaural beat technology. And that tended to make even non-meditators within 10, 15 minutes relax out of their brains. And then from there, we suggest that they could go to their heart. And so we might interweave Hemi-Sync with some beautiful heart-opening songs. You Light Up My Life, Wind Under My Wings, whatever, that might work. So people very rapidly got into an open heart state. That, as a whole group field, when we go in the workshops, we have 18 people. That's as many as will sit at a dice table. And we spend a whole day in preparation, meditation, etc., before we even go to the tables. We have tables reserved just for us. So we have the table by ourselves. And when we first started doing that, we'd go to the tables and Om, and it freaked out the casino a little too much. So that was at the Sahara, after 3 times where we won every session, every time we went, they invited us not to play there. And so then we went to the Stardust, and we played there many, many years until somebody complained about their room, and they pulled the group record, and everybody had won every session, and they just said, we don't think you merit an executive host. And now we've been at Palace Station for, 8 years or so, probably 60 workshops over there, and they treat us well. So we create this field and include even the crew, and we try to open our ego away from something more important than ourselves, both the group energy and even the whole world. We have a blessing bucket in the corner, totally voluntary to put in whatever you want in terms of how many kugarans in there. And over the years, I think we've raised 150,000 plus for charity, with the idea of us just having the privilege to meet and play with PK. People from around the world should benefit, we never even meet. So that's an example of this wide open heart state. And we found it very successful. We don't win every time, that's for sure. And I've heard other people say, and I would agree, PK is impossible till it's easy. It's just, you're looking at this natural, effortless state to develop. But say I was up here tonight and you said to me, I'll give you $20 million if you can fall asleep in the next 20 minutes on TV while 100 million people watch. There's no way I'm going to do it. Falling asleep is a natural function. Usually you say, oh, I'm a little tired, I'd like to go to sleep. And then you think of something else, right? And then you naturally fall asleep. PK is very similar. You set up a strong desire, a clear goal, etc., and then you have to shift to letting it happen. And we've developed a lot of tricks to shift. Sense of humor is helpful, the meditations we use, the, doing this for other people, all of that comes in handy. And over this time now, the database for me personally say, on slot machines, I may run 50 to 100,000 hands a year through the slot machine. At the end of the year, I can ask the casino for a record of my play. And they can say, you are ahead X, Y, or Z amount. I know by chance, after 50 to 100,000 runs, the casino average should have taken over, right? So it's good verification for me. we see also on the dice, folks doing things that just shouldn't be done. This person, we have a target of 9, they roll 6 9s in a row, the next person 7 9s in a row, next person 8 9s in a row, the next person 9 9s in a row. You know, that gets way out there statistically. And the neat thing about working in the casino as you do that, that first 6 9s creates amazing excitement. And PK is even kind of contagious. So that person can hug the next person who picks up the dice and does even better. And we go like that. So that's what kind of stuff I'm up to. Let me do a time check. I'm about where I want it to be. I'm going to do a note check, make sure there's nothing I forgot. I do want to stress a little bit more at the that idea of now at Monroe Institute. After doing the Inner Vegas Adventures about 5 years, I said, what could we do with this PK if we had a longer period of time than the 3 days of that workshop and in a more protected setting? And so we started a program called MC Squared, Manifestation and Creation Squared at Monroe. And we based it on the successes of Vegas, that we wanted to have very strong psychokinesis tasks, most are macro PK, where people could see and get feedback quickly. And we'd use all that meditation that we can do up there with the Hemi-Sync, and we'd have healing circles, because we found in the Vegas workshops, people were waking up second day of the workshop pain-free from post-polio syndrome for the first time in 20 years. Those kind of spontaneous healing events were going on. And so MC Squared, it's been running for, I don't know, I'd say at least 15 years now. And we've had really interesting healings there. People with all their nails yellow with foot fungus, the nails are clear the next day. Folks manifesting amazing things. And in the PK, we broadened to doing growing seeds in your hand, getting sometimes 1.5 inches of root growth in 2 or 3 minutes. Now there's been some nice studies that are just recently mentioned in Dean Braden's new book, Practical Magic? That's not the right word. Real Magic. Sorry, Dean. Talking about, in a nice 4-way double controlled way, how they could accelerate seed growth. We do the metal bending with real heavy, the heaviest Oneida steel, and have had stuff where metallurgists looked at it and said, this is impossible. If you heated it, there'd be certain marks from the heating. Without the heating, it would have been too brittle, it would just break if you did it by force. And so we do some dice throwing, we do the seeds, we do lighting bulbs with our, fluorescent bulbs with our hands. One of the researchers in Virginia measured 400 volts about 6 inches off my hands as we're doing the light bulbs. And they find also up there that when people are applying healing energy to, as a healer from one person to another, often they get these high voltages off the person's hands, the healer's hands. So we expanded the range of PK we do there, and are able to meditate deeply. And so as we were doing that for a while, Ross Dunphy from University of Virginia, the Department of Perceptual Studies, who was there recently? Division. 2014. Right, Division of Perceptual Studies. He came to Monroe to do a gateway, which is their premier program, their program most people take first. And he mentioned what he did. He said, well, why don't you come into the MC Squared? So he's been keeping data now for 4 or 5 years, us doing 3 or 4 of these groups. And his main focus is, I want to develop a box that measures when this energy is being transferred. So he has a shielded box that's shielded from everything he can figure except for cosmic rays. And the results are coming in. They're in pilot study and now into regular study. The initial results are coming in statistically significant at the Monroe Institute as the group focuses on that box and either puts a nice shield of aura around the box or tickles the box with their energy swords that I mentioned earlier, or sends healing through the box to another loved one at home. And so he's pretty excited that the data is coming in significant there as well. So that's one place this has gone. And I think I'm going to stop. That gives you some idea what I'm about, and I love to answer questions. So how about we open up for some questions? I see somebody coming up. We're going to have a mic up here for you. That'll give me a chance to take a drink of water.
So I was at the Department of Perceptual Studies and had the EEG on my head and stuff,
yes.
And the results were amazing. I mean, it's 100% real in the brainwave patterns. Then I did the first event Horizon at the Monroe Institute, and I was with Dirk Dunning. And I noticed him, we were pushing each other to the limit, going crazy, and got some amazing results. Before that, I was with someone who was basically like a benefactor for a group, and we would go to the casinos in Palm Springs, California, the Indian casinos, and gamble. And I was wondering on the slots, do you get better results with the digital or the mechanical? Have you?
I don't think it matters unless it matters to you.
Okay.
There's a big part of this that's belief. So if I said affect a slot machine in Paris, most people would have more difficulty than one right in front of them. I think time-space is an illusion, and I don't think there really is a real difference except for the person's belief. And the beliefs can really trip you up. Yeah. So I would say the machine you have the greatest affinity with. And I do want to leave time because I know some of you on the way in to this talk said, oh, I can't wait to hear your talk and then rush down the casino. So I'm going to leave the last 10 minutes for hot casino tips you can use tonight, okay? So.
I'd like to ask you a question about the brain as a filter that blocks psi. We've done work in patients with brain damage where they had enhanced psi effects, and what may be happening is that the brain damage knocked out the filter. And what you may be doing with the techniques you're describing is actually learning to suppress the filter. So the question is, in patients with brain damage, do they do better at the slots? And in the things you're describing,
yes.
Do you see better results in patients who've got brain lesions, some of whom may have damage to the filter?
Okay.
To test the hypothesis.
Yes, I have not seen many people come through the workshop with that diagnosis. So, but I would say it's very consistent with what I would see. The one filter is becoming an adult. So if you look at children in Chinese literature, on PK, in my own experience, they usually have a much easier time than adults. In China, when they do this, children from rural areas have an easier time than kids from cities. And it usually tends to start to diminish around puberty for many people. My daughter, 14, we had all these bent metal spoons in the house. And she said, and I said, well, you never even let me try to show you how to do this. And her eyes rolled, Okay, I'll listen, blah, 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 Dad's talking. And the phone rang, and I looked away, and I looked right back after I picked it up, and she had already bent the thing. And she said, I got tired of listening to you. I just shot fire out of my eyes. So I think it doesn't have to be a neuropsychological or physiological damage so much as some way to mute that filter. The movie Stroke of Insight, when Jill Bolte Taylor had a left-sided stroke, she describes when that would impair her, she'd go into this oceanic all-is-one state of consciousness. I think Hemi-Sync is really good in that you can experience some of that without having the stroke and without having the brain damage that you're mentioning. But I'd start with, we have a good friend whose daughter has retardation, and her heart is so open. She cries the second we think about leaving. She cries with joy when she gets there. And reports are she's dynamite in the casino. We can't use children. You have to be 21 or more. But I would say, yes, we're talking in the same area.
What's interesting is that the frontal lobes, which is where the filter, I think, is, doesn't fully develop until people get, in childhood, it's not fully developed.
Right.
So it actually may have more than just being a child.
And yet there's a dance, because if you get drunk, you will probably not see good effect. And the frontal lobe is shut, but the energies are gone. Most people talk about PK as affecting matter with your mind. I think that's false. I think the mind is the steering wheel of a car. It sets the intent of which direction to go, but you go nowhere without the gas.
Right.
And for me, the gas is the energy of an open heart, because that's the most positive psychological, spiritual energy you can use. You could also use great anger and other things and break glass. But for a steady, consistent performance, open your heart. Does it make sense? Thanks for your question.
Thank you.
Long time no see, Joe. I'm one of those engineers at Pear that
Oh.
you spoke of so kindly.
Wow.
And I had something of a two-part question about the Hemi-Sync technology and the Monroe training. I'm afraid the first part is purely personal. I did the Gateway program about 21 years ago. I've often wanted to go back, but have had various personal issues making it impractical. Could I jump directly into a more advanced program like MC Squared, or should I take Gateway a second time?
No, if given working in that lab and having taken your Gateway, the MC Squared is a graduate program there. You'd be very welcome.
But more generally for Hemi-Sync applications, I found the Gateway program wonderful and life-changing, but I know other people have tried using Hemi-Sync and it doesn't work for them. They get more and more irritable and angry the more they listen to binaural beats. So what's your interpretation of that, and what can be done about it?
I would be first saying that actually is very rare. Unless you have somebody who might be highly guarded, like a Vietnam vet with very strong trauma, may not be able to let their guard down easily. Somebody who's really in a lousy marriage, but they don't want to face leaving because of all the ramifications. And if they let their guard down and got in touch with themselves more fully, that issue would have to be addressed. When those kind of things happen, often there will be some agitation. The Hemi-Sync has shifted a lot in the years, so some of the newer stuff may affect them differently. If they weren't using that, then like in my PK tips tonight, you can't go run out and do some Hemi-Sync, right? Other things that would naturally put you in an ebullient mood, grounded to the earth, feeling expanded to spirit. When I go to the slot machine, usually I'm in touch with all the relatives who've died for me and in a deep love relationship with them and talking to them as I'm pulling the lever, okay? So there's other ways besides Hemi-Sync, of course, to get into an altered state. But in the literature, that altered state thing does seem important. Namaste.
Another Monroe question.
Yeah.
Having been to a couple programs, I was curious if you could talk about the specific focus levels that you're talking about. And then the second part of it, I guess, is I don't even know if they're still doing the spatial angle modulation stuff, but how do you find that?
At Monroe, they did not want to use terms like nirvana, so they made up terms focus 10, meaning body asleep, mind awake, focus 12, being more in touch beyond your 5 physical senses, 15, free of time, and up into all the way up to 49. I'm not going to go through all of those. In the CDs that I've developed, the Heart series particularly, we will use 27-ish. This is not a Monroe product, okay? So this is 27-ish kind of things, and 15 and 12. A lot of all you need really is that 12 idea of expanding beyond your usual 5 physical senses to get this stuff going. And while we're doing the PK at the tables or in a lab, I don't tend to associate that with a particular focus level, except the relaxing first and then expanding. And because the focus levels can be a little ungrounded, if you will, and this we want a real full grounding into the body as well as being expanded. And we use that spatial modulation kinds of ideas in CDs I mentioned to you, those Ocean Heart and series and stuff, because it generates gamma in a little easier way or a different way than Hemi-Sync generates. And we're finding gamma waves are helpful for the PK stuff. Sure. Hi.
Hi, so correct me if I'm wrong about this, but my understanding of slots is that they're programmed to pay out every so often. And just thinking about that, I'm wondering if any part of like when you're doing this with slots is to kind of walk around and kind of get a feel of what slots are more likely to pay out now, or if it's just kind of random where you go and then once at a slot you're kind of like, okay, then doing the intention.
You bring up a very important and squirrely, difficult issue in terms of the relationship between PK and precognition or remote viewing or intuition in general. And I don't think you can ever fully separate them out. The way the slots work is, yes, they're selecting hands, but they're doing that at 1,000 times a second, okay? So in any given second, there probably is a crappy hand and a royal flush in any given second, all right? So it's not like I'm gonna pay out on the 100th time it's pulled or the 1,000th time this machine is pulled, but rather the selector is going whether somebody's playing it or not, okay? That said, definitely for myself, I'll give you an idea. The rhythm might be I'm in meditation, even at home before I come down here, definitely when I'm here, and I am imagining certain machines that are my favorites and the certain jackpots I want on them and the exact order of the cards in that hand, okay? Very specific and clear. Then I let that go, and as I'm walking along, that machine will say to me, quote, "Come to me after dinner, I'm ready." Or something like that. Or on the way, another one goes, "Hey, good looking. You've never even thought about me, but sit down and your royal is right there." So you're picking up both. I think the way it is there's an intuitiveness about when the ideal time for PK to express can be there, even on dice, not just mechanical slots. And so you're doing it if you want to do the best. That's part of my tips tonight is you have that intuition too, and you never push the river. Any efforting or struggle, again, tends to get in the way. But machines do talk. Does that help? Sure.
I have another Hemi-Sync Monroe Institute question. Sometime in the last 5 or 10 years ago, I did visit there, and they had some sort of open house, and I participated with headphones on it.
Yeah.
Didn't really do much for me, and I hypothesized that it was because I had lost a lot of hearing in my right ear.
Okay.
Since then, but I did buy some of their Hemi-Sync recordings, and I tried them and so on, but nothing much happened. Since then, I've lost almost all the hearing in my right ear. And I was wondering if you know if they or anyone, or you yourself know of any way to achieve this, the binaural stimulation of your brain with only one ear?
Not studied as much as I would like. There's some interesting things about Hemi-Sync. There was one study done showing no effect using air tubes. And they began to think it might be the electrical pulsing off of the headphone rather than the sound, okay? As you know, there's cochlear as well as inner ear stimulations. We've had so many people, I've been a trainer there at least 26 years, who come through who are completely deaf in one ear. And many that are impaired in that ear, who do have effect. So there's a good mix of intentionality, and the term Hemi-Sync actually involves a whole bunch of things trademarked together. Bob's voice, his sound effects. He noticed when he would take the train up from New York to Connecticut, where he lived, that people seemed to go in trance with the noise of the train, right? Which is a monaural signal. Okay, so he has that in there. He has phase pink shushy sound, many different things. So the binaural beat stimulation itself may be a little weaker for you, but the other things may still be operating. And if you like the visualization and the person's voice and things, it may still be able to put you in an altered state. So you could try that. But if not, if you love other kinds of music that really speak to your soul, whether that's classical or whatever it is, you might use that as a driver to move out of your head into your heart. And that, sure.
The electrical PKA I find fascinating. I hadn't heard about it, but what was the meter that you were getting hundreds of volts? Is it just like a standard digital?
I don't know much about all that stuff, but he had some kind of voltmeter, I guess, as he called it. And he just said that he got about 400.
Probably nothing exotic, just like a little
No,
handheld.
I think it was pretty, yeah, handheld, not too exotic.
And with the fluorescent tubes, I got lots of fluorescent tubes. I found doing sculpture that old fluorescent tubes have high pressure argon,
Yeah.
and the new ones that are green have a different pressure, and they take a huge voltage to light them, and then they stay cool.
Huh.
So if you can light fluorescent tubes, you might get some that you can't, because you need 10 times higher voltage.
Okay, well, we replace them about every 2 years there, and we do 4 groups a year. And the weird thing is, you know, first of all, static electricity. We've done it naked in the shower. We'll do it in very humid Virginian time, and then in the middle of winter when the heat is on and it's very dry. We don't see effects change. What we do see a change is with group energy. So there won't be one group that's just flat. They're always on their cell phones or whatever it is, I don't know, but they're flatter. Or we've had a challenge in the environment, such as 9/11, something that really puts a big ripple in the forest. And for a while, the lights particularly seem very difficult. And then when energies are better, boom, they go great. So that's the weakest PK task that I know of in terms of I don't understand what's going on.
But don't throw away your fluorescent tubes, because the new ones may not work at all.
Okay, well.
Second one is, if you can light fluorescent tubes, you can put your hand in a wastebasket full of cold argon, and lightning bolts will shoot out of your fingers.
Okay.
I've done this with artificial aids, just with Tesla coil stuff.
All right. Does it hurt your hand?
But no, it's tiny little stings like touching a doorknob in the winter.
Okay. All right. I'll keep that in mind.
Here, I'm going to add some more weirdness here.
I was looking for something to do on my 70th birthday.
In my research, I look at magnetic field activity during healing, during healing touch. And so years ago, I actually brought my magnetometer down to Monroe Institute during a guidelines course. And it was an amazing group. We had an incredible synergy of the group, and you could feel the sort of pressure in the room. And I was recording magnetic field during this, and it was the largest magnetic field I've ever recorded, actually.
Wow.
What interested me, though, was there's these big releases that occur in the magnetic field, and we actually had anomalous light flashes in the room, and I was curious if you've seen any of these light flashes in your work.
Occasionally, yes.
And
the orb thing, you know, which I'm not so much orbs, but you can duplicate at least 90% of those optically, but and I'm assuming you know about the new global coherence project with magnetics around the world. So that's a whole nother area we look at, but.
Yeah.
The healing PK stuff are very closely related.
Yeah, I'd like to do it again.
Yeah. I'm going to grab a bottle of wine.
A question about altruism.
Okay.
So you had mentioned that you have this pot for donations and so on.
Yes.
To what extent does that matter in terms of having the PK be successful in the casino? And is there an ethical aspect on the psi level, or is it perhaps more just on the personal level and you're feeling that you're warmed and doing good?
I could say a couple things. I can predict I'd say a correlation of 0.8, how a group will do depending on what is put in the blessing bucket before we ever start. Okay? So there's many people that have come 20 times, but usually most of the group is new. And within that, and the economics in the world and different things, that may vary. In fact, over time, it's gotten tighter and tighter. Our economy has gotten tighter. But I can tell something by how open and generous people are before we even get started versus after they win. And that idea of, you know, there's so much abundance, I can be generous versus I got to hold tight. So that comes in. I have seen people go and do really well at the table, say, I'm giving everything to the American Cancer Society that I am going to earn. Other people, I want a new Mercedes. And I don't see a difference there as long as they really want it and their heart's aligned with it and they're doing it not from a place of lack, but of celebration. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So myself personally, my intuition said from the very beginning, Joe, if you make this work, we'll shut this down. Mm-hmm. And so I can have fun and at the end take 1,000, buy some clothes, give 1,000 to charity, give 1,000 to my kids, or whatever, and it's joyful. If I try to earn a living by it, it'd be tough. Mm-hmm. Because it would put in this is to pay bills, and it would bring the energy down for me. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
Seems to be a karmic aspect there. Anyway.
Yeah.
I have the Hemi-Sync, most of those CDs, and didn't have a lot of good results.
Okay.
But it's been about 4 or 5 years. Have you improved some of the Hemi-Sync in the recent?
They have continued to do different things up at Monroe. I, about 8, 9 years ago, started doing my own line of CDs to use some of what I knew about hypnotic languaging as a psychotherapist, to put in the kinds of music that would move my heart, to put in the signal bases that just, you know, I wanted to control what was there.
So does that still fall under the Hemi-Sync, or is it?
The term Hemi-Sync is trademarked, so it does not.
So your brand.
These are binaural beat stuff and some spatial modulation types of stuff within there. But what I'm getting is reports that people really, really love them and they're effective. To give you an example, I wrote a book called Liquid Luck, trying to condense these 20 years into something in a half hour that somebody could get benefit. So the CD came out first. And within days, I was getting reports, people selling houses that had been on the market for months, people solving engineer problems that had been there for years, all kinds of good manifestation. But I used an image of, like, from Harry Potter, the liquid luck, and you fill it with joy and unconditional love, compassion, all these kind of things to get you out of ego, and filling it with a feeling of good fortune. And then when you want, like to go to the casino or whatever, you imagine yourself taking a drink of that. So with the meditations I've put out, usually they're quite practical like that. And so people stay awake better, some. And I love Monroe, you know, and the stuff they do is tremendous. But for the PK stuff, the stuff at the back table would probably be more helpful.
Yeah.
You know, it's not commercial for that, it's just
website.
Designed for that, yeah.
You have it on your
website. Or the website, yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, your Liquid Luck CD.
Yes.
2 years ago, I was in a place of need.
Okay.
So I used it,
okay.
Usually in the evenings, you know, and I'd fall asleep in the recliner and, you know, wake up, but I had used it. And I had in my mind, I had focused on $50,000. So long story short, I got unexpectedly $50,000.
Great. I'm glad this story is going this way.
It gets better.
All right.
So beginning of this year, I find myself in the same situation. And I was actually, I totally forgot about the Liquid Luck CD, and I was going through cleaning, and I found it. And I said, well, you know, it worked once, you know, why not again? So this time I said, well, you know, I did 50,000 before. I'm going to do 100.
Okay.
So again, I would use it in the evenings, fall asleep in a recliner or whatever. I probably used it 2 weeks or whatever. And so I did come in to 100,000.
Great.
But there were kind of stipulations to it.
No. Okay.
So
You didn't have to kill anybody, did you?
I did not get the whole
All right.
100,000, but
All right.
the whole 100,000 was given to me,
Okay.
and it was to be dispersed
Okay.
among. So I solved my problem,
Yeah.
and again, it worked.
Wonderful.
So for whatever it's worth,
Thank you.
testimony.
Last question, and then I'm going to go in my tips, okay? I think we're at about 10 minutes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Wonderful talk, thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Melinda, I live in Sedona, Arizona, where I teach
Hi,
a
Melinda.
psychokinesis class about monthly.
Uh-huh.
I follow the techniques because I originally learned how to do like a PK party class
Yes.
from Jack Houck, the late Jack Houck,
Yes.
who is a dear friend of mine. And so I do his techniques, and I'm having a lot of success. But one thing he talked about often, and I found this very useful in my classes, is creating a peak emotional experience. So I was wondering if you could address that. Some of the things you're saying,
Yes.
you haven't used that terminology, you're explaining the same
Yeah.
thing.
There's a book called The PK Zone. She talks about when somebody's not familiar with PK, one of the easiest ways is to create a peak experience.
Yes.
And that could be, like Jack Hawk's party, 1,000 people going, yay, let's bend spoons. Okay, maybe 300, I exaggerate occasionally.
In my class, it's like 10.
What she says, though, is after you've seen it, then the highest criteria, the most useful thing to adopt is deep trust. And so we find after people have done it for a while that they can remember the state, be in that flow, and maybe not have too much peak going on. I've come out myself personally after the death of my mother, death of my father, many times, under great stress. The week before I've been at a funeral of a family member and stuff, and still been able to, if I can keep my heart open, have the thing go.
And I
but
can see how that's
initially,
true
one
for
of the
me.
easiest ways to trick people is do a peak. Get
Yeah.
a real yeah going. Yeah.
What gets them outside themselves?
Yes.
And
Outside
where
yourself.
they're willing
yes.
to.
Yes.
That's one of the reasons
Yeah.
I've experienced in my classes. Kids do it so well too,
Yeah,
because they're able to get that excitement and that get outside themselves and
Yes.
play. That,
Yes.
that
I
area-
agree.
idea of play. But you're right. With me, now that you say it that way, I found that, like you said, the confidence is there, and so I'm not necessarily needing to achieve that
Yeah.
to still have it happen. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's see. 6 minutes worth of tips. I'd stay away from Keno. I would not play a game unless you understood the rules to at least some extent, or have somebody there to guide you. I would set up some joyful play money that becomes just the sand in the sandbox you're going to play with. And for one person, that might be $20, another would be 200, what have you. Most people coming to Vegas break the first rule. The person with the most money wins. The casino has more money than you. So most people come and go, I'm going to risk $20 and I want to make 200. Assume no PK. The variation around the mean, you're going to be plus and minus 20 way before you get to 200, right? And you've lost your 20 and you're out. Instead, I'm going to risk 200 to make 20, puts you in the position of I have more money. Because all I need to do is hit the 20, and I am totally grateful for this wave of abundance. I go celebrate, etc., and then I come back again when I feel like it. So that's one of the first things. Second is almost everybody on the plane coming out here is excited and thinking, I'm going to Vegas and I can afford to lose $20 a day or $50 a day or whatever, I'm on vacation. And that's exactly what you'll manifest. You got to think of the money as seeds, like a farmer would think of the seeds that he puts in the ground to yield a crop. Or think of this money as an investment. So I don't know if anybody has ever farmed, but when I first got my place, we put in a whole acre of corn, which was a stupid thing to do for one person. And the crows followed me around for years. But one seed creates tremendous amount of gain. And so you have that image with the money you're going to be gambling with, that this is seeds to play with. Does that make sense? Then, as I mentioned, grounding, you know what that means? Casinos are not grounding. They don't have windows. They don't have clocks. They do sometimes put nice oxygen in the air to keep you awake, but they'll serve you free drinks. Grounding means to really be fully in your body, to let your body speak to you without repression, to be in touch with spirit and earth at the same time, like the big X intersecting in your heart. That type of a grounding stance. You can't affect the earth reality if you're not even here on earth. And many people are quite ungrounded because it's a tough little planet to be on. You're in your head, you're in the past, you're in the future, but you're not in this moment and relishing being here. So be really relishing where you are. Do something that feels good. That might be a chocolate sundae or walk in the desert, what have you, before you enter into the casino thing. Then pick something that delights you. There's games that have horrible odds, best I know, that have wolves or the go to see the Wizard of Oz or whatever. But if you go, damn, I want to play this all the way to the finish so I can see the wizard. And you stop thinking about the money and just be a little careful because it'll say 1 cent machine, but it's 301 cents is a pull, which is $3, right? Playing off strip, very helpful. You're off strip here. The odds at Palace Station where I am on video poker might be 98% and they take 2%. You go move to the strip, it might be 93%. And they're taking 7%. But it's like a 7% a minute mortgage, right? Because you can pull the slot machine once a minute easy. You could probably pull it 10 times a minute if you're real fast. So that percentage, if you're bucking that kind of percentage, can get in the way. So it's usually good to play someplace where the odds are good. But it can help to understand the game. That makes sense? And you have fun. It's all about fun. It's and as I use it as just to talk to my dead relatives or to sit there and think of all the things I'm grateful for, or what have you, and then the money flows. And beforehand, I've set some kind of target. The fellow that used Liquid Luck, he set the target. You can set a target tonight of, I'm going to go with the $20 bill and I want to walk out with, and it counteracts what I said a little bit, but I want to make that into 200. But you do it gently. One machine pays you $3, yay, I take the piece of paper, I go and I do something and for a while and I go back and celebrate again. And I stay in a feeling of celebration rather than greed, or rather than fear. Thank you so much tonight. I really enjoyed seeing you all.